Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Natter with Nick. Delighted today that I'm joined by Cloke Browne he's a director of the Medical Risk Services, an acronym of MRSL. Been with the business for just over 4 years. My name is Nick Reeks. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Teleware PLC. So good afternoon, Chris. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Very good, Nick. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you have a conversation. So for the audience sake, well, let's just get straight down to business. A really interesting character, I believe, here, who's got many opinions, which is lovely in these situations. Hope I'm not going to show your age here, Chris, but I'm going back now to the 1990s. You can remember that far back.
I'm older than I look, so yes.
You did a PhD in machine learning.
Yeah.
You must have seen some incredible changes in practices since that period in time. First of all, that question, and secondly, what do you think is going to happen over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so this is, as you say, where my opinions differ from the norm, Nick. So to be honest, my view of the whole sort of machine learning AI space is, in the 90s, we were using techniques that developed in the late 60s and 70s, maybe into the 80s, early 80s. But that's what we used in the 90s, and the techniques being used today are fundamentally not particularly different. They are getting different results at the moment because computing power is so much greater. And so the amount of computing power you can put behind this stuff is incredible and producing some amazing results. But I see those results as quite superficial. And so, and certainly when I have conversations in my industry, insurance, around what AI will do and all the possibilities, there's all sorts of amazing things that people think that it will do in the next 5 years, 10 years. Underwriters will be replaced, actuaries will be replaced. My feeling is the next 5 years we'll see some quite serious disappointment coming out of the people with those expectations. And certainly from the sort of muttering I hear around the space, that's already starting to happen. There are people working on AI projects which aren't really producing the amazing results that they imagined that they might.
Do you think insurance is a people-to-people industry still? I mean, there's a lot of insurances online, but what's your view on this? Because
yeah, no, that's always an interesting one, and insurance is always done as a face-to-face relationship business. And it is, that's true. Does that necessarily mean that we all need to troop round a floor in a building on Lime Street, and a quite different building, being the Lloyd's building, the Richard Rogers designed Lloyd's building? No, I don't think so. There's been a number of people who have believed for 30 years or more that insurance should move to an electronic trading platform. And banking succeeded in doing that 30 years ago, maybe even more when it was Big Bang, 1986. So certainly there is every scope for technology to play a much bigger role in the insurance market. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a person-to-person business. I mean, the banking markets are still very much relationship driven. It's just those relationships will work in different ways. It will not work in all trooping to the same place and the pubs and wine bars around Lime Street and Lloyd's and so on. It will work more in terms of desk to desk, face to face, and technology is much better placed to support that now. If you take even our conversation now, Nick, I mean, we're in completely different places speaking over an internet link with audio and video.
Yeah, and it seems to work pretty well. Excellent. So that sort of leads us on very nicely into the lockdown period that we're sadly under. How has it affected the areas of insurance and risk that you're active with at the moment?
Yeah, so for us, fortunately, as I said, thank God we don't really insure pubs and hospitality, and I feel very sorry for them. I popped up to my village pub to show some solidarity last night, and fortunately it was very active, heaving. So hopefully they'll be all right through it all. The areas that we insure are still okay. Dentistry and cosmetics is the one sort of area again that has been enormously hit by the lockdown. But in terms of how we work, it has changed it to some extent. I mean, I really did go up to London probably about 2 days a week. I haven't been into London since the 16th of March, I think was the last time I was in London. And actually, that's been absolutely great. It's been so much more productive. For us, it's you know, it's what we always thought, but it's for us, it's actually enabled us to sort of implement the type of working in the way that we have always wanted to work, but have never been able to, because everybody's thought that you have to go to the office, you have to be around Lloyd's.
Yeah, I think those long trips from, well, not too long, but probably not the most luxurious trips from Winchester to London on packed trains is not something that you'd want to rush back into.
No, you're right. I mean, there was a number of us on LinkedIn, I think, who piled in. Where was it? I can't remember. Was it Dettol or someone? Somebody had an advert about, you know, how everybody missed the commute or were afraid to go back. I think it was people saying people were afraid to go back, and all of us were saying, no, we're not afraid at all. We just don't want to do it.
True enough, true enough. Well, I'm glad you're very productive. I think that makes a huge difference to your business and the way that you can react to your customer and clients. So I like these controversial marks. Again, you suggested back in 2017, we're moving from the 90s to 2017 now, saying it could be a brokerless brokerage was necessary.
Mm-hmm.
That was how much of that has come into pass. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. And I've forgotten I'd said that, so I looked it up, but it's still absolutely something I believe in. So if you look at it, so by brokerless brokerage, what do I mean? And what's ringing around my head is the comment of a very good friend of mine who was an insurance broker for decades. So you know, right back into early 80s, maybe even late 70s in Lloyd's and so on. And you know, he just sometimes had some amazing phrases which just sum things up. And his one phrase that just rings around my head is, "Oh, the broker's there to choose the claret." So you know, which doesn't sound in this day and age as an enormously valuable item. You know, we can all read online reviews and buy claret online and all sorts of stuff. So really, what I'm looking at is you know, people talk about the death of the insurance broker. I think really what they mean is the death of the traditional insurance broker, who was really somebody there who knew people. It was really that relationship thing that you've been talking about. Now through LinkedIn and so on, it's quite possible to meet almost anybody you want. The question is, how do you attract their attention and how do you add value to them? Yeah. And I really see that's where insurance brokers have to be. They have to be value added. So certainly in our brokerage, what we're trying to do is to understand the risk better than the underwriter and explain the risk to the underwriter. You know, really, and particularly in the healthcare medical stuff we do. My co-founder was head of operations at what was then called the NHS Litigation Authority, that tells you what it does, and is now called NHSR, which is more fashionable. But it's a bit of the NHS that pays all the liability claims. So he's got huge knowledge of all the issues, what can go wrong, how much it costs, how to defend any claims, and so on. And so we really try to analyze these risks and understand them better than the underwriter when we go to the underwriter, so we can really get the right insurance at the right price. And that for us is a value add, and that's really where we see the benefits of technology. It's, you know, in the old days, another friend of mine, Robin Mertens, who's a big name in the whole insurtech drive, beautifully described the old way of broking. It's basically said, you know, an underwriter and a broker sit down over a coffee for an hour and have a conversation where some, but definitely not all of the information is imparted, and somehow they agree a price. So we're very much about trying to gather lots of granular information, analyze that information effectively, present it well in a digestible format that won't take the underwriter hours to plough through, but it's clear and obvious, and that they can understand, so that we can agree upon the right price. And that's really what I'm driving at by that statement and the article that I wrote.
Yeah, well, it looks like it was around about the time you were setting up MRSL, and you're still there, you're still growing. So your statements seem to be come to fruition, I guess. So all good.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, and the whole technology side is very important in achieving that.
Absolutely. So, what changes in your business have you had to make in order to keep productive through this current situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, we were fairly well. So I was always, my preference has always been to work from home. So I've worked from home for the last 10, 15 years. So I was quite well set up.
Yeah.
But even then, I've had to improve my setup. We've had to effectively build home offices for a couple of my colleagues. And then, with the more disparate, diverse team, so you're not in the office and can't just shout over the desk for this, that, or the other thing, and lose a bit of that personal contact as well. We've really been looking at implementing a lot of these productivity tools and so on. So, the things like Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Planner. What amazed me was, I think I'm a tech guru, but I get out of date. And in fact, my son sort of showed me a lot of this stuff and said,
Yeah.
"Hey, you should really take a look at this." So, for us, it's really bringing in those new sort of remote team working tools and infrastructure, and even for us who think we're pretty tech savvy, that's a big project, a lot of work. We're out of date. We ultimately will probably need some expert help to do that properly.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you, and resonate with a few of the terms you put in there. It's nice to turn around and say, "What do you think about this?" to your colleague. I missed that, and even missed the bad jokes of people sat around me. So the socialisation is always a problem. I don't know if you've got people that live on their own and their social interaction is work. So I feel really sorry for them, for the mental well-being. If you've got a family, it's a little bit different. If you've got somewhere to go out, or somewhere to spread yourself within a household where you can actually have private space to work. But people that live in bed sits or on their own, I really feel for those people.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm. So, as well as your other interest, are you building Brave Partners LSP as a technology investment bank?
Yeah, to some extent, I've got quite busy, if you like. The broking firm is sort of the main focus, sort of investment of Brave Partners at the moment. So most of my time is there, but certainly, Brave Partners itself has always had an interest in technology, in the technology sector. I have a former colleague and friend who does a lot of that now, and actually he's very focused on. He was a big investor in metals and mining, and actually he's switched to be very focused on clean and efficient energy solutions for that sector. So that's really quite tech driven.
Yeah. So, what gaps in the market were you looking to solve by bringing out Big Brave Partner?
Yeah, so Brave Partners itself was really the sort of concept behind that was that you didn't really get sort of sensible investment banking services at a low level. I mean, it was really it's a consolidation story again, and across all those firms, the law firms, the accountants, the banks, and everybody. And as all these things consolidate, they become bigger and bigger and have bigger and bigger overheads and want bigger and bigger deals. Yeah. So it gets to the point where everybody's chasing the big guys and nobody's taking care of anything beyond that. I mean, I had a conversation with with one of the non-exec directors of what I thought was a relatively small bank, and somebody who wanted to raise 2 million, and his answer was our minimum fee is 2 million.
Wow.
So it's like, where does that leave anybody who needs that sort of smaller service? So we were really looking to come down into those emerging tech companies, which are all smaller, but very viable and very vibrant, and provide them with quality services, even so they're not right up there in the sort of FTSE 100 and trying to raise millions and billions.
Yeah, considering our country's 95% SMEs, it doesn't seem to make a lot of chances. The balance seems a little bit out, doesn't it? But everybody wants the blue chips. So yeah, good luck with that one.
Yeah, thank you.
So finally, in June, you published a LinkedIn article detailing the tech projects that you'd been undertaking from home during lockdown, ranging from setting up remote PC management systems to installing cinema surround on your TV. Have you got any updates on that since June? Because it sounds a fascinating project.
Oh, thank you. Yes, yeah, no, it's still ongoing, still deeply in it. And I will say, give a mention to my son who was is at Manchester Uni technically, but is actually remote learning through COVID, and is very technically good. So was a large driver and a big helper in many of those. And it really comes down to sort of what I talked about. I mean, we are very technically focused. We believe in technology as a huge enabler, and certainly, as we move really out of the office into the home, all that office grade tech needs to follow us into the home. So my home office is now in my home, and that means all sorts of things. That means that my information security, and we're a medically driven business, so we have medical data, so I can't have that sort of exposed through fairly weak, lax, normal home level security. I've put all sorts of sort of enterprise grade systems and equipment into, and that's sort of driving it, and yet we continue to grow and we continue to develop. So my current project is I probably mentioned the having all our old servers. So we moved from having the server in the cupboard, which is a sort of an absolute cliche for tech companies like yours. You probably roll your eyes and laugh about that. And we did change that about a year ago. So now we have proper outsourced servers. But I do have the servers that were in the cupboard, and I put them onto this wonderful project, which is originally started, I think, by Stanford University, which makes, if you have spare computing power, you can make it available to help with biochemistry research, and a lot of that research is focused on vaccines and cures and remedies for COVID. So we're very pleased to be a part of that. But progressively, for my marketing now, we are doing a lot more video, a lot more podcasts, and all these things. So that takes actually an awful lot of computer resource, and you very quickly run out of power on your normal desktop PC. So we are just in the process of getting all those big powerful servers all sort of geared up and upgraded and available to run video editing and video processing.
Oh, brilliant. Well done. So that's it. For the audience, if you need any medical risk service advice, insurance, etc., please do contact LinkedIn for Christopher Cloke Browne. Just look him up, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you. Chris, thank you so much for joining this podcast. It's been very enjoyable for me, very insightful. So, and I wish you all the best for the future.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. And as I've said to you, I was enormously impressed by how detailed your research was. Well, and certainly from what I've seen of your services, they look great. Exactly what people need to make that leap to home working.
Thank you so much, and goodbye. Thank you.